All right, very good. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So I have a lot to go through, and I'm going to have to do it very quickly because Joe Bass hasn't given me much time. We're going to talk once again about particulate matter, PM 2.5. Now, this is the most important regulatory science issue in existence today. It's actually more important to climate than carbon dioxide. Why do I say that? Because the Clean Power Plan, the Obama climate rules are based on PM 2.5 and the notion that PM 2.5 kills people. Social cost of carbon, also mostly based on PM 2.5, not CO2. Now, the key notion here is that particulate matter kills people and kills a lot of people. EPA says that particulate matter kills one out of 4 deaths in America is due to particulate matter. Now, I debunked this notion extensively in my new book, Scare Pollution, which is in everybody's package, so I recommend that you read it. Now, despite the fact that I have exhaustively debunked PM 2.5 and EPA, we're going to pretend for the sake of this part that EPA is correct. And I'm going to show how corrupt EPA is. So my presentation is dedicated to Nicole Wan, who died in 1996 as a college student. EPA says that 1 out of 4 deaths in America is due to air pollution. Well, in fact, she's the only American in the last 69 years to die of air pollution. She didn't die from air pollution, she died from air pollution researchers. So EPA has been conducting a variety of human experiments with a lot of different, from ozone, PM, even chlorine gas. If you want to think, PM 2.5 is basically soot. This gives you an idea of how big the particles are. There are various forms of PM 2.5. We're in particular going to talk about 2.5, which is much smaller in diameter than the human hair. As Jim said, there are plenty of natural and man-made sources of particulate matter. From coal-fired power plants, smoking, barbecues, marijuana, hookah bars, tailpipes, chimneys. Now here's where the rubber starts to hit the road. So EPA, for a long time now, has said that any exposure to PM 2.5 kills. And it can kill within hours. This is a document from EPA's 2009 PM 2.5 assessment. I don't expect you to read all this. If you want my slideshow, I'll send it to you. But I just want to show you that I actually have the document. So EPA says that any exposure to PM 2.5 can kill. This is a reiteration of the no safe exposure. Former EPA chairman of their outside science advisory panel, Jonathan Salmon, in New England Journal of Medicine, wrote, "No threshold of safety." This is former EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy. She wrote to Congress saying there's no safe level of exposure to PM 2.5. You can't inhale it at all. This is a document where EPA says, I've highlighted it down there, death can occur within hours from inhaling PM 2.5. What really got me interested in this was in 2011, September, there was a hearing on the Hill, and Lisa Jackson, then she was the EPA administrator then, she stated, particulate matter causes premature death. It does not make you sick. It's directly causal to you dying sooner than you should. So PM doesn't even make you sick, it just kills you. EPA, in that same testimony, she claimed that 1 out of 5 deaths in America is due to PM. She said, in a colloquy with Ed Markey, he asked her, well, how serious is the health effect? And Lisa Jackson said, well, if we could reduce particulate matter to levels that are healthy, we would have an identical impact to finding a cure for cancer. Well, that's 600,000 deaths a year. I'm sort of getting ahead of myself here. We're talking about EPA has been doing human experiments with particulate matter. Remember, there's no safe level, right? EPA said so. Well, so we had sued EPA at one point and got some discovery from EPA, and we found out that EPA's clinical studies coordinator would tell its human guinea pigs, I've highlighted it down there, there's a possibility you may die from this. Okay. EPA researchers, they tell everyone PM 2.5 is dangerous. This is a University of Michigan researcher. He actually, I forced him to say this. He said he was going to stop doing experiments with PM 2.5 because PM 2.5 is bad for you. And of course, EPA regulates on, I mentioned this earlier, EPA regulates on the basis that PM 2.5 kills, and kills a lot of people. And just to give you an idea of how important PM 2.5 is to EPA, EPA says that the Clean Air Act provides $2 trillion worth of monetized health benefits every year. 85% of that comes from PM 2.5. So this is a very important regulatory issue. Essentially, EPA has created PM 2.5 as the most toxic substance known to man. There's no safe exposure. It can kill you within hours. There's no substance known to man that can do that except for PM 2.5, which you're inhaling right now. Let's see. Okay, so EPA was conducting human experiments with PM 2.5, and we'll get to why in a little bit. This is one of the ways they would do it. They would idle a diesel truck outside their laboratory. You can see the piping. They would pipe particulate matter from the exhaust pipe into a lab, into a gas chamber. I don't know any other word for it. It's just a gas chamber. Now, I know you're laughing. It's funny, right? But remember, any exposure to PM 2.5 kills people. Let's see. Who is EPA putting in this chamber? Well, you know, EPA says that the people who are going to be most vulnerable to the effects of PM 2.5 are the sick and the elderly. Well, so here they're putting 70-year-olds in there, 75-year-olds. They're looking for, I highlighted here, 80-year-olds they're put in this chamber. Remember, the elderly are most vulnerable, and PM 2.5 can kill you in hours. Children. Okay, I mean, we're worried about children, right? Well, what kind of children is EPA testing particulate matter on? Let's see. So they're spraying, in this case, spraying diesel exhaust up the noses of children. How old are the children? Does this shock anybody? 10 years old? This happened at the University of Southern California and UCLA. Remember, any exposure to PM 2.5 kills. Okay? EPA, they tell everybody else, they tell the whole public, the whole world, the risks of PM 2.5 are dire. What do they tell the Institutional Review Board that's reviewing these experiments? Well, the risks are minimal. Okay? California, the state of California determined in 1998 that diesel exhaust causes cancer. And there's no safe exposure. And they're spraying this up the noses of 10-year-old children at the University of Southern California and the University of California, Los Angeles. Okay? Now, just as a sort of a sidelight here, EPA proposed to ban experimenting on children in 2003, and they finalized the ban in 2006. Well, guess what? These experiments occurred during 2004, 2005. I mean, this is an agency that is out of control. And I mean, there's a lot more to this story. Let's see. These are some ads EPA was recruiting for study subjects. You remember EPA said that, let me go back here. EPA says that the sick are vulnerable to PM 2.5. Well, so let's see. So they're testing on healthy people, people with metabolic syndrome. There's people, you know, overweight, high blood pressure, elderly people with asthma. It sounds sick to me. Diabetics. EPA's putting these people in the chamber, right? And the way I found out about these experiments was EPA reported that you know, they exposed some 58-year-old woman who was obese to a high dose of particulate matter, and they had to take her to the hospital. Okay, now it turned out that what happened to her was unrelated to the 2.5, but they published this study claiming that it was 2.5 that actually caused the harm. Now, and here's what EPA says, people with heart and lung diseases, children and older adults are the most likely to be affected by particle pollution exposure. Well, why are they testing this? If that's, look, it's totally nuts. So I don't think I have time to go through the amount of EPA, but the only important thing here is that EPA says any exposure, any non-zero exposure can be deadly. Now, outdoor air has about 10 millionths of a gram per cubic meter of PM 2.5. But EPA, the 58-year-old woman who had to go to the hospital, they exposed her to 10 times that amount, 112 micrograms. Their experiments with diesel exhaust, they expose people to 300 micrograms. Some of the human experiments go up to 600 micrograms. In one case where the equipment malfunctioned, they exposed them to 750. That's 75 times the amount of PM2.5 that's in the air. Are these experiments fundamentally unethical or illegal? That's what it took me a while to figure out exactly how to frame, these human experiments. So we have all these rules governing human experiments, from the Nuremberg Code. The federal regulations are codified as the common rule, and we have state laws. State laws provide that for doctors to do something with patients, they must get informed consent. So let's just refresh. Any exposure to PM is lethal. Lethality can occur within hours. PM kills hundreds of thousands of people annually at outdoor levels. Old and sick are especially vulnerable. What does EPA tell the study subjects? It's human guinea pigs? Well, read. During the exposure to concentrated air pollution particles, you may experience some minor degree of airway irritation, cough, and shortness of breath or wheezing. These symptoms will disappear 2 to 4 hours after exposure. Well, what happened to the death? We're supposed to be dying. This is your regulatory EPA, right? I wonder if Trump knows about this. Let's see. So, and then we had the EPA studies coordinator. He claimed that he was orally telling people, well, you may die from this. Well, of course, that's illegal because federal regulations, first off, you can't risk people's lives for regulatory reasons. But even if you were, to try to do that, if this was a medical experiment, which would be a permissible reason, you need written disclosure. But you can't tell people orally. I mean, these are people who are poor people, very uneducated people that are, willing to be EPA guinea pigs for $12 an hour. Now, this is the interesting part. Why is EPA experimenting with PM2.5 on humans? Well, their claims about PM2.5 killing hundreds of thousands of people, all based on statistics. But in a court case with me, EPA admitted that their statistics don't prove anything. They've tried animal toxicology. They take these poor mice, they stick them in these tubes and force incredible amounts of particulate matter down their lungs. Can't kill them. Not one. Not one. And so EPA admitted in the litigation with me, they do this because the statistics don't really show that PM2.5 kills anybody, so we need to develop medical and biological explanations. So EPA is trying to hurt people to validate its regulatory agenda. Okay, I mean, I find it hard to say they're trying to kill people, but what else can you say? I mean, they tell everybody that there's no safe level of exposure, yet that's exactly what they're doing. And they're exposing people, they say, who are most vulnerable, the old, the young, and the sick. Okay, so these experiments are fundamentally unethical, and EPA knows this. It's been told it by the Science Advisory Board. EPA's got some lame defenses. EPA told me, well, the risks only occur not to people, but to populations. Like populations are not made up of people, right? Now, I want you to think about this. This is kind of coincidental. This man who is most famous for his Nazi human experiments. The more we do to you, the less you seem to believe that we are doing it. I can't think of a quote that summarizes PM2.5 and EPA better than that, and that is something to be compared to Joseph Mengele. Okay, so I just want to go back to, I told you about Nicole Wan, the woman who I've dedicated this work to. She was killed in an experiment because she was undergoing a bronchoscopy where they stick a tube down your trachea and they want to look in your lungs. And in her case, they wanted to see if air pollution caused lung cancer. So they wanted to, get samples of her lung tissue to see if anything went wrong. Well, they gave her too much lidocaine, and she died. She's the only person that has died that has anything to do with air pollution in the last 68 years. These EPA's experiments are not scientific. They've been told so, but they keep doing them because they are desperate to justify their junk science regarding PM2.5. Everything, there's nothing legal about these experiments. So let's see. Let's wrap up here since I'm being told to wrap up. I'll just go to this. This is where I started with this. If PM2.5 is as deadly as EPA says it is, okay, then it has committed felonies in the states where it has conducted these experiments because the doctors failed to give disclosure, and you can't, they're fundamentally unethical and illegal because you can't treat people like guinea pigs. You can't kill people, try to kill people or hurt people for regulatory purposes. The only way EPA doesn't have this liability is if PM2.5 is not as harmful as they claim it is, in which case they've been lying to everybody else. So which is it, EPA? There's no third option. If you want my slideshow, I'm happy to send it to you. The whole story is in here. There's a lot more than what I've talked about. I mean, as I said, my book is an exhaustive debunking. The human experiments are just one aspect of it. But it's important to remember, I don't know what the hell they're learning over there, but you guys are going to be a lot smarter. This is the most important regulatory science issue for climate. So you should give yourselves a round of applause for showing up.